We really wanted to get people interested in women's softball, and we had one of the best pitchers in the country, and somebody named Brittany Sneed, and she could hurl a ball. And so he said, Jenny, there's not a guy on the baseball team that can hit Brittany. And so he said it. And so anyway, so he called Wally Pontiff, and he called Wally. He said, Wally's a good guy. He said, Wally, I'm going to get you in the PMAC. And this is in a basketball game. This is not outside in Alex box. He said, and Brittany's going to throw 3 strikes at you, and you're not going to be able to hit any of them. And so he's like, yeah, coach, sure, coach. And he did. I mean, she whiffed him by. And but he fouled one off. I mean, if I can tell you that the crew in the PMAC was sweating buckets and bullets that day, because, if he would have hit a light even with a foul ball, the basketball game probably would be off. I mean, they'd have to clean off the thing. So that's the kind of guy Skip is. And, from there on out, the crazier I was, I mean, I'd dress up in pink wigs and vinyl dresses and do things at halftime at women's basketball game, and he'd be dancing right there beside me.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, my name is Andrew McClendon. I'm your host of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. We're recording from the Propel production podcast studio here in Baton Rouge, and we're joined by our guest, Miss Jenni Peters, owner of Varsity Sports. Jenni, welcome to the podcast.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me.
We finally meet. I've been hearing your name forever and following you throughout your career. And I just wanted to start by kind of what seems to be at the root of your personality in your life, which is running, and curious about how that started. Did you run in high school?
No, I was one of the pre-Title IX people. Lived in Baton Rouge all my life, and I adore Baton Rouge, but I didn't have the opportunity at Lehigh, public school girl, or even through college. I probably wasn't interested. I was one of those go out and grab a beer kind of girls rather than a runner. So,
So how did that transition to where you started running, and when did that happen?
Well, I guess if I think about it, I took that grab a beer kind of girl personality and turned that into something productive. Because honestly, when I was in grad school, some of my co-ed softball team, we were sitting at the Catery, and anybody from Baton Rouge probably remembers the Catery. With Claters. Oh yeah,
I'm having dinner with Brian Brusso this evening.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Well, tell Brian I'm talking about the Catery. Yeah. So we were at the Catery, and Brian was probably back there serving us some beer. Anyway, some of the people, it was after a practice, said, hey, come with us over on College Drive. Miller Lite sponsoring this little 5K, and for $5 you get a T-shirt and a beer. And I said, sounds good. And so, that's when my life changed.
So that was a 10K?
It was a 5K.
A 5K.
Andrew, I didn't know what a 5K was either.
Yeah. So, okay, so how do you go from not running? You're about 25 when you did that 5K.
Yeah.
So how did you go from there to becoming the runner that you became? Because you became quite a runner.
It's one of those things, maybe like being an entrepreneur or business owner. You grab something that sort of draws you to it. And, people say, I don't like running. How do you like running? And I'm not saying I like running every day, but there's something about it that was always there for me. And that sounds a little bit too probably corny, but that's really kind of it. And I ended up getting with some fast guys, fast guys that like to drink beer too. And, and in all honesty, they were a whole lot of fun. They're guys that ran for LSU, and they took me under their wing, and we just, we had a ball. We, ran up and down the streets and around the lakes. And, it didn't take me about 3 or 4 years. I went to Houston Marathon and popped off a 2:39 marathon, which is well out of what I expected of myself. And so the rest is kind of history, I guess.
Yeah. So gravitated to long distances.
I did.
Pretty quickly.
And it was just kind of fun. I mean, that was back, and if you want to call it the running boom, and there was a race somewhere around the country every weekend, and it was just, it was just fun times, fun times that translated into a lifetime of opportunities for me.
So how committed did you become to running in those first couple of years? I mean, did it just begin to be able to run with some LSU guys back in the day, you were doing something right. Were you running a whole lot?
I was. And, it's one of those things that just happens. I work with a lot of people these days, and it's kind of more of a thought out process. But back then it was not really as thought out. And, like I said, it was just some fun guys. I mean, they were real competitive. I had one of the guys that wasn't from the United States, and, the culture was a little bit different. And I remember him telling all his friends, I said, dude, if a woman ever beats me, I'm going to hang up my shoes. And so that's
a goal was set. Right?
That was all I needed. He changed my career then.
Oh, that's fantastic. So at what point did you start to get serious about it and look for that next event? I mean, were they all half marathons and marathons that you were focusing on at that point?
Well, I guess if you have to say a pivotal point is if I started late 79, really 80, and things happened really quickly because in 1984 was the first women's Olympic trials in the marathon. They'd never run it before. And so to qualify for something that epic, it had to be every female athlete's goal. And so it was in Olympia, Washington, and so I worked myself really hard, and that was at Houston Marathon. So I actually qualified. I was in the top 30 going into the trials. Of course, I didn't make the team, but still, 84 was pivotal because, I can say that I ran the very first women's marathon trials.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then you did that 2 other times as
well,
right?
I did. I qualified for them, but I had a thyroid disorder, which is just a whole other thing along there. So I went and watched in the other one. So, but in 84 also I ran the Olympic 10K trials on the track, which is fun.
Wow.
So it was good. It's been fun.
Yeah. So that's phenomenal. So, and then at some point you're actually getting on a Nike team. Right?
You start getting noticed, by companies, and Nike national team hired me, and, stipends and athletics, and that's back when Nike was really focused on running. So it was great. I ran around the world. I mean, I went to Japan, with it. So, it's a world of experiences. A funny story in Japan that, I was so honored to make the team because it was with some of the big studs back then. If anybody remembers Carl Lewis in the 100, and, it was, a bunch of good people. So I'm thinking that I'm just, I miss it. So I'll go ahead and fast forward to the end of the story that I'm probably one of the few Americans that got a standing ovation in Tokyo Stadium that day because I was dead last. I came in there. I went out with, everybody else thinking I can run this first mile. I'm in Olympic Stadium in Tokyo. I'm an American. And, well, anyway, it's one of my more fondest tales to get the standing ovation because they're not used to seeing Americans being last. So that was me, and I'm proud of it.
Oh, that's hilarious. I ran in high school, and I got up to a point where I had problems with my knees, and it not only hurt to run, it hurt to walk, and so I had to take a break. And the coach, Pete Boudreau, who you mentioned earlier, suggested that to stay in shape, I swim. So I was going to join the swim team, but it didn't work out for me. Commuting back and training with the team. I grew up with a pool in the backyard. I never did, youth swimming. I had no clue how competitive that was or how they trained. I swam a lot, but no training whatsoever. I said, look, Coach, I'll just train in my own pool, right? That'll be fine. And all the rides will work out, and I'll just show up for the meets. And, it was just kind of an infill thing anyway. And every coach, the swim coach, everyone was fine with it. So, I said, look, hey, I'm a long-distance runner, so I'll be a long-distance swimmer. It makes sense. So I show up for my first meet, and I think it was an 800-meter swim. And
long way in the pool.
It is. It's a long way. And I took off in the first half of a lap. I'm like, you know what? I'm in this thing.
That was me in Tokyo.
Yeah, those
that
guys
was me.
are just a little bit ahead of me.
That was me.
So by the time I got towards the end, I turn on my last lap and look, no one is in the pool. Everyone's finished. They're out of the pool. I swim just with my tail in between my legs to the end of the pool, and the lane guy goes, 2 more.
Oh.
I had to swim there and back, and my swim career was very short. But,
well, that's
so you were in a little bigger
feel your pain.
stage.
Well, true confessions, I'm not an excuse maker, but 2 days before I'd gone out for, a little shakeout jog in Tokyo, and never really kind of having been out the door of a hotel in Tokyo, I never gave it much thought. You get a block from the hotel and nobody speaks anything that sounds like anything. Right. Every street sign, it's not Maple and Vine or Main Street. So I was gone for probably about 2 hours before I finally was able to tell somebody I'm at the Tokyo Hilton. So it was just like, it's very disoriented in Tokyo. Yeah. So I kind of left my 10K out on the roads of Tokyo, but I learned.
Yeah. So when you're getting a stipend like from Nike, but that's just, it's you're not gonna feed a family on that.
It's
right?
not the big bucks. I mean,
you got to win some events
and when you have that type of thing back then, they expect you to be at the races, and so it's almost like they would tell you, you've got to go to these 2 races this month, and you've got to represent us there, and and it was decent money, but I can tell you probably the most to ever run at a race, won at a race was in Boulder, Colorado, at Boulder with the bonuses. It was about $7,000, which well, that sounded good to me then, but that's not a heck of a lot of money.
Yeah. That was good money back then, but only lasts so long. So in your prime competitive years, how many miles would you run in a year? Any clue?
I can tell you the good week, some things were really good. I was probably averaging about 80 miles a week, which is a lot. But, the women I was competing against, it was kind of a mileage hungry area. And they were doing 100-mile weeks. And it's just, that was not me, So anyway, there was a lot of running.
So how many marathons would you guess you've run in your life?
I have said to my friends time and time again that one of these days I'm going to sit down and write them and count them, but because I couldn't tell you. Wow. But I'm thinking I'm probably close to 60, just sort of the ones I could just tell you. So it's a bunch, but, I loved the marathon.
Yeah, I tried to look up some of your records online, and there was, about 5 that showed, and then, it said click for like 54 others or something like that, and but it didn't pop up.
Yeah, that was a lot of years in the rearview mirror, but they were great years.
Yeah. So your running career and your marketing career, that was like that was, you had an MBA from LSU, and so tell us how that all worked.
Well, I had hoped to maybe run professionally for about a year at some point in time. And I gave it a whirl, and just as you and I just talked about, the money is nice, but it's really not anything. And, to tell you the truth, things stopped being fun. When I used to go to the races with my friends and it was all fun, it was all business. And, you can see some of the athletes that are much more accomplished than me, that some of the things that they're going through in terms of their pressures, it's, when the fun starts leaving that thing that you love, it's, it's something that you've got to evaluate. So anyway, it stopped being as fun. So I said, I got to get back to, to being me and running with my friends and going the races I want to go. And so I went back to LSU, and I'd done a teaching assistantship when I was in graduate school. So my department head, Joe Hare, welcomed me back. And so I said, come on back, teach part-time. And then 25 years later, I was still there. But it gave me, I was an instructor, so it gave me the flexibility to be able to train and race and still do something I love, which was teaching college kids.
So you kept training and racing, but just on more of a gratifying level for you.
Yeah, on my terms, if you will. So, and I still raced for Nike until another little side story is, obviously if they're paying you the money, they want you to wear, their gear. And I remember there was one marathon I was racing. It was super cold, and I had Nike tights and a Nike long sleeve shirt and, all this whole thing. But towards the end of the race, I started shedding things off. And anyway, at the very end of it, I had a singlet of the silkscreen business, Dream Silkscreen, that I own here in town next to Varsity Sports. I just happened to have that as my underlayer. So I finished the race, and I'm in the front page of the paper with the Dream Silkscreens, not Nike on. So, there was the end of my career with Nike. I said, but... anyway,
didn't work
no, it didn't. So, Jenny, you just won a big race and you didn't have our logo on. So,
So what do you consider your biggest victories? The races that you may have won that were like the ones you're most proud of?
This probably sounds insincere, but Andrew, you're from Baton Rouge. I can tell you I could go all over the country and win races, but the River Road Run here in Baton Rouge was always just, the pinnacle for me, because, I could do anything around the world and it wouldn't matter, but, you got to come back and win the River Road Run. So honestly, the goodness truth is running the River Road Run in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, that's great. So at your LSU marketing job, were you in the marketing department?
I was.
Yeah. So that was a long career. When you look back on that career, and there was some overlap from your running career and your varsity sports career, but when you look on that marketing project job at LSU, what do you take away as being the thing that you remember most?
It's being the teacher in the college business for so long has had just such long-term effects, because I still see my students. I mean, there is not a day in the store that somebody doesn't come in and says, you taught me at LSU. So you've just got to think of how many years I taught at LSU and how many people, and I taught Marketing 3401, which everybody had to take. So, I mean, my contacts in Baton Rouge really stem from, I taught my banker, I taught my accountant, it's just, it's the Baton Rouge thing that I love so much, but, I take all those people with me.
So at some point you transitioned into the marketing for the athletic department.
I sure did.
How did that go down?
Well, Skip Burtman is how it came down. Skip is just, he's a kindred soul. And so when he was appointed athletic director, the women's sports were a little bit in shambles post Joe Dean, God bless his soul. But, there was a Title IX suit that LSU was involved with, and one of the few universities. So Skip's idea was to change that. So he reached across campus and said, come help me with this. Come help me market the women's sports. And fortunately, I came in during some great times when Sue Gunner was there, and Simone Augustus and Sylvia Fowles and, Brittany Sneed and softball. I mean, some of these names that people may or may not remember, but, it was just the greatest time.
Yeah. And Skip was an entrepreneur extraordinaire. I mean, when you look at the, number one, how he brought LSU baseball into national recognition, but and how he filled the stadium. He was 500 fans there when he first got here, and then when you looked at his sports camps, I mean, he was wildly successful with that. So, a very entrepreneurial person at heart, right?
He is. I think you and I were talking before the show actually started that, Skip's just a cowboy. I mean, he's just going to do anything it takes to, to have fun. And one of the things that he had done, we did all kind of wild things together, and I hope Skip listens to this. But, we really wanted to get people interested in women's softball, and we had one of the best pitchers in the country, and somebody named Mbd Automation, and she could hurl a ball. And so he said, Jenny, there's not a guy on the baseball team that could hit Brittany. And so he said it. And so anyway, so he called Wally Pontiff, and he called Wally. He said, Wally's a good guy. He said, Wally, I'm going to get you in the PMAC. And this is in a basketball game. This is not outside in Alex's box. He said, and Brittany's going to throw 3 strikes at you, and you're not going to be able to hit any of them. And so he's like, yeah, coach, sure, coach. And he did, he did. I mean, she whiffed him by. And but he fouled one off. I mean, if I can tell you that the crew in the PMAC was sweating buckets and bullets that day, because, if they would if he would have hit a light even with a foul ball, the basketball game probably would be off. I mean, they'd have to clean off the thing. So that's the kind of guy Skip is. And, from there on out, the crazier I was, I mean, I'd dress up in pink wigs and vinyl dresses and do things at halftime of a women's basketball game, and he'd be dancing right there beside me.
Oh, that is so hilarious.
Yeah.
So, and of course, the goal is to sell tickets, right? I mean, the marketing is, isn't that the root of it? You
got to create relationships, with your family. It's the same in every single thing I've done, whether it's teaching school or whether it's getting more fans to a women's basketball game, or or having people come to the store. You've got to develop real relationships with people and with fans and with customers and with students.
Yeah. Well, I just can't even imagine being able to work side by side with Skip when it comes to, building relationships and filling the stands, because he was the master.
And the thing is, he doesn't say no. I mean, I've since worked with other people in athletics and, around, but, Skip is my kind of guy. Any idea I had, whether it was reasonable or unreasonable, Peter's, go get it, so he was great that way. And it was not always good. We probably weren't the favorite people of a lot of people in the liability area, but we did it.
That's wonderful.
We're both allowed to talk about it.
That's great. Jenny, let's take a quick break here, get in a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back.
Thank you, Andrew.
We would like to thank Mbd Automation for their support of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. Mbd Automation is a mechanical install contractor with a program-centric focus. So what do these guys do? They install conveyor systems, VRCs, platforms, singulators, sorters, and all sorts of other types of automated equipment. Who do they work for? They work for systems integrators, manufacturers, and end users in fulfillment centers, airports, mail processing facilities, and projects in the defense industry. Mbd Automation works for numerous Fortune 500 companies across the United States and has a list of international clients that they perform work for in the U.S. as well. If Mbd Automation can help you on your next project, you can find them online at mbdautomation.com. And we are back with Jenni Peters of Varsity Sports. Jenni, you mentioned that you were there as a marketing director in the athletic department during some really special times and got to witness a lot of great victories. And let's see if you could share some of those with us.
It just, when I look back over that career, I found the time in LSU athletics, I think, were truly golden. The first year I was there, here I'm a runner, and we're hosting the NCAA National Track Championships at Bernie Moore. And, one of my responsibilities was to set up kind of a VIP suite type of thing over at the PMAC to watch it. So really the meet went on, and it was just fantastic. And then to seal it off, we won the national championship on the last event, the relay. And so, I mean, to kick off a career, in your favorite sport, in your hometown, a national champion there. And, it's just so many people. I mean, I work with Nick Saban and Les Miles, and that's a real contrast in characters. And we don't have to say anything else about that. But, to witness, I mean, I saw a real pivotal moment when we signed Simone Augustus. We got to a point with Simone and Sylvia Fowles and Tamika Johnson, we would sell out the PMAC. It was, if you remember the days, and you probably don't, you're such a youngster, but women's basketball, they'd pull down the purple curtain because they couldn't sell out the other side of the PMAC. So, and I worked with Dee Dee a lot. We worked really hard, and she's done so many good things. So, I got to see all that, and so it was wonderful.
A football national championship?
Football national championship. It's
and some great. Baseball as well?
Yep, all that kind of stuff. And, it's kind of interesting that one of my best friends and actually original investor in the store was Scott Woodward. And he and I go back, he's on the picture. He and Nanette, his wife, are on the picture. They're friends from way, way, way back. Actually, Nanette, his wife, had a small running store in town before I ever did years ago called Easy Runner. Yeah, it was a little tiny house on Ferndale, probably not big enough really to make any money off of, but, she had fun with it. So
nice little hobby.
Yeah, so it was great. And so, but they've been, best friends of ours forever. Matter of fact, Scott was on a couple of the running trips with me that I've talked about. The one in Boulder, Colorado that I did. So anyway, it's just kind of fun to have done that. And he always loved LSU athletics, but to see all these years later for him to come back, and I visited him when he was up in Washington because Brooks Running, which is our major brand, is up there. So when I go up to Brooks, he and Nanette would take us out. So
that's fantastic.
So
you must be proud to see how he has done so well coming back to LSU and athletic director.
He's done great, but he's a Baton Rouge guy that loves Baton Rouge like you and I do. And
he and I went to school together.
When you're that vested in something, it's like I'm that vested in my store. I think he's that vested in LSU athletics.
Oh yeah, that's clear.
And I was calling him lucky the first year he came, and then the last year has really sort of tested his mettle a little bit.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So you mentioned investors, and so you started Varsity Sports. What was it that made you want to go? I want to open up a little shop. And how did you do it? You mentioned investors. It
was in 2000. I co-owned a little T-shirt shop that's still there on Perkins Road called Dream Silk Screens, and it was actually in the Varsity building. And so some of us that were there said, this demand for T-shirts, it can't last forever. And, of course, we can't kill that one off. It's more successful than ever. So we just took that little house, got its own commercial, and said, let's just try to sell shoes. I mean, it's one of those that's, okay, let's do it. And we did it. And, we just figured if it just took us, friends working in it, and Nanette, Scott's wife was one of those. So if it took me and Nanette and Jane and a handful of us to work in it, just so we could have a running shoe store. And it's, we've got this house. So, I would never have ever thought would be, this at the sales level we are right now.
So you didn't open it with the thought of, hey, I'm going to do multiple stores and et cetera,
no,
et cetera.
Sir, not at all.
But also this thing was going on with what was happening in the industry with big boxes and Academy and,
It was. I mean, I can tell you that I remember, and so funny going by Cortana Mall, Alice and I were talking about it a little bit ago, that I came by Cortana Mall, I was like, where's the mall? Anyway, one of the big box stores, I don't remember, Just for Feet, it was going to be there. It was a big kind of thing. So we were all excited, finally a store. And we went in there, and it had loud music, and nobody knew what they were talking about. And it's like, boy, this is a disappointment. So I really think that experience of getting excited for some place I didn't have to mail order. I mean, we mail ordered back then if we wanted anything. And so, we did it. And the investor thing was really interesting. And this is probably a good context for people that are listening to this for entrepreneur ideas is what I did, and it only took me about 2 weeks to raise $100,000,
Really?
With no strings attached. I formed an LLC with Blaine Clark at Keene Miller, and I went to several of my friends, really 20 of my friends, and said, would you be willing to put up $5,000 for, to do this. And I can't think of, I had a handful that said I just don't have the money or no or whatever, with a bunch of the people we've talked about being. So I got $100,000 and, we were off after that. And so it's been good.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So are any of those original investors still involved?
A couple of them are, but when I decided to do it, I purposefully, from a marketing standpoint, I picked somebody that was a director of a women's fitness center at that point in time, a person that was a physical therapist, a person that was a pediatrician. So, I had my, a lot of fingers
people
out in the
that
community.
could reference.
Could refer, yeah. And, I'm a part owner of a groovy little running store over on Perkins Road, and here's why you should go. So I have to say that was a really critical decision. And, it's, no interest money, and, it's 20 people that want your store to be successful. So it was, and all my other stores, I've kind of done the same thing.
Do you use the same model?
Same model, and I gave the original investors the right of first refusal, thinking, they've done their contribution and they'll let me move on. But I think most of them have gone on to in my other stores too.
Oh, really?
In Baton Rouge, I bought most everybody out. I think recently, it just showed it was a pretty good payback. That the $5,000 investment not too long ago, I bought them out for $30,000 for that share. So it was a pretty good return on their investment. Yeah, it was good.
So when you started this, you had an idea of what the competition was. That bad experience you mentioned. But what were you going to do that was so different that was, make you feel like you could be successful competing against someone that has a purchasing power of a big box?
If I was really sincere, I would tell you I had not any big game plan for it. That just as I'm sitting here thinking about it, probably paralleled my running career, that I got into it accidentally and, it rolled, I was committed to it and I loved it. And it's the same type of thing. It's the same reason, I was successful with running. So it didn't have to be successful. So it was.
Yeah. But, do you remember having a fear of failure early on? Like when you first started?
I'm not real scared of failing. I think that, I think a good entrepreneur takes calculated risks, and, and it was that, I've always, with all my stores, the thing I wanted to do, if something went south, I wanted to have enough money to pay back those investors. I never wanted to, to have my friends hanging out there, but I just knew, if you're willing, I'm looking at you now, it's like, no, I just knew. I was going to make it work. It didn't have to make the money it's making now. Right. It just had to make enough to let me do what I wanted to do.
So at what point in the trajectory of your business did you feel like this is going to work? I'm actually might even make a little money doing this. How long were you into it when you may have gotten that feeling?
And honestly, this is the first time I've thought of these parallels in all these 20 years I've been doing this. It was real similar to my running career in that it didn't take but 2 or 3 years to say, maybe I can run pretty good. And, 2 or 3 years is like, maybe this is a business that's going to make some money. And, and then one of my reps saw this cute little house in Mandeville. And, to this day, everybody tells me the only reason I went and opened the store in Mandeville because I had a crush on the house, which I had a crush on the house. I loved the little house. And we just, I had it for 13 years. We just recently sold the little house in the store. The store is still doing outlandishly good. But I sold the little building I had a crush on to somebody that's going to make a barbecue restaurant on it, just because we're moving up the street to a really great location. We're building on the Tammany Trace Trailhead. So
Right.
So anyway.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
I don't know if I answered your question. A couple years.
Yeah. So Mandeville was second,
Mm-hmm.
right? So how big a stretch was that to go, 60 miles away and run two businesses? Did you find that to be tough, stressful?
Well, you know how it is when you have a crush.
Yeah.
I had a crush, so I made this long distance relationship work.
Yeah.
It was interesting at first because we had a lot to do to renovate that house because it was a residence.
Now, your other locations? You have...
I went on Magazine Street in New Orleans. That's a little house that we had wanted to buy to the same thing, but my landlord realized that he had a pretty good thing in us. So, now, we're still there, and it's 11 years later, and I haven't ever bought it. So,
yeah. So, coincidence that they're houses?
No, very thought out. The house is really part of our brand right now. It just makes people feel less intimidated, feel like they can stay longer. At least I think so.
Yeah. And you mentioned magazine, and
we do have one that's not in the mall that we just opened during the pandemic. Who does that? We did. In Lakeview in New Orleans, just a really bustling area, and just two people in a center. It's a beautiful little store, but we share a wall with District Donuts, which is another New Orleans local. So
right.
There's a lot of synergy there. People eating their donuts and feeling a little guilty, so pop in for some running shoes to walk it off.
So you talked about branding, and when you look at Varsity Sports, your business, you've really taken a brand and made it iconic, and which I would guess is everyone's goal, being in business for 20 years. But you've done it.
Well, thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, so... obviously with your education and your experience, you probably had some good idea of how to do that, but you execute on it. Was there a part of you that said, hey, I've been teaching here, now let me go see if I can do what I teach?
I think only instinctively, that instinctively I believed what I told the students back at LSU all those years.
Yeah.
And a brand, it has to have a personality. And if it's a personality like a person that people like and that they can relate to, then, then that brand could be extended.
So I look at your motto, or what do you call your run hard, live easy?
Run hard, live easy.
But I like to think of that has become a brand in itself. And so walk us through, where that came from, and then how you're giving away a shirt with a pair of shoes, like when that started and how that's grown. Another
one of those fortuitous accidents, but you remember we had the T-shirt shop. That's what we had in that building, and so we built a little building back in the back. So we still had the T-shirt shop that, like I said, is still wildly successful, despite us thinking 20 years ago it was going to die away. But that was easy, because we could do it cheap. We could give people, that was really, it was going to be the first month. He said, for the first month, we want to extend the brand. We want our logo everywhere. So everybody that comes buys T-shirts in this first month, because we can print them out back, bring them up front. So
that's great.
Yeah, it was a little dog and pony show.
Who came up with the Run Hard, Live Easy?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that we were looking for the next Just Do It. If you remember that, I love Just Do It. I thought that was just the greatest campaign ever.
And it was.
And it was. And, I remember with a bunch of us having a yellow pad full of the Just Do It's. And that one kind of jumped off the page mostly because it was not intimidating. That was kind of one of my... And, Varsity Sports was never a name that I loved, but everything else sort of put off the non-runners. Because if you go into my business right now, probably 7 out of 10 of those people in there don't ever intend to run in their shoes. They're in there for footwear solutions. They're in there because they're going to Disney. And so, my brand has expanded because people aren't put off by it. So anyway, the Run Hard, Live Easy sort of sounded friendly. Didn't sound like, you were elite racer, which, so that's kind of it.
Yeah. And Live Easy works
well
the
Live Easy,
in Louisiana, right?
Right, exactly.
So, but you went beyond that first month.
We did. It just, and it's just kind of funny. We've got I don't have that on now. I'm looking at my own shirt for those of you that are just listening. we have the original iconic shirt. It's the one that we've had. And at one point in time, maybe about 4 years, I said, people have to be tired of that look. I mean, we've had it so many times. So let me change it up a little. Let me change it to something. It's like, oh, my God, I created a riot. Well, where's the other shirt? So anyway, we're back. It's been the same design. There's a couple people that have the one that's probably the Liberty Bell of varsity shirts, the ones I tried to change. So
like New Coke. It didn't work.
Perfect parallel. Even one time I said, well, let's give away mouse pads, and see if in addition or as an option, the mouse pad, 100 mouse pads sat. People still wanted the T-shirts even if they had 10 in their drawer.
So I know many people that have many of those shirts.
I know. I keep thinking they're going to get tired of them soon, but, thank God not yet. So
you've done it this entire duration of your business?
It's hundreds of thousands of shirts now. So it's a blessing. I mean, I'll go somewhere and see it, and it'll just, I'm not even tell you how it makes me feel, but if I see it somewhere else.
I was going to ask you that because you see images from people who are traveling all over the world.
All over the world, and I'll send them to me. I've got them on a camel in Egypt at the bottom of the ocean. It's just, it's a little odd for me. I remember being in Portofino in Florida, and I got into the elevator with a family that all have varsity shirts on, and I didn't even know what to say. I mean, I froze up. It's like, oh my God. And why in the world would that make me feel so weird? But it made me feel so uneasy. I couldn't even tell them, oh, thank you. Anyway.
Oh, that's amazing.
I froze.
So, it's interesting because it sounds like people aren't just buying shoes from you because they get a shirt, right? But there's something going on there. They could sit on their couch, click a few buttons, and have some shoes delivered to them. So what is it?
I tell the staff all the time, and they don't have to be told. They're fabulous. But, you've got to provide an experience that can't be one-clicked because they can. And I'm sure they do. I'm sure we don't make every sale. But, if they get that experience that can't be one-click, they'll continue. And I can tell you post-pandemic, every one of our stores is busier than it's ever been. I mean, we had a breakfast meeting yesterday, in all honesty, full candidness, with all my staff from all the stores in Baton Rouge to figure out how to manage our successes. It's like, what has happened? What can we do? I mean, I'm so thankful, but, sometimes it's challenging managing your successes because people come in the store with a certain expectation, and when it's too crowded or they have to, but you know how that is, and so it's just, it's a blessing, but also I don't want to, to alienate any of the people that come to expect something from our store. Yeah,
it's interesting how certain businesses were just crushed with COVID and others did really well. And I remember, and I may have told the story on the podcast before, but I remember going into a local bike shop and they were wiped out with inventory. And Allison, you were with me. We were picking up a bike for our adaptive bike program. And my first thought was COVID was crushing this business. And they were ready to go out of business. They had sold all their inventory and across all of their stores and had record sales by many multiples. And so much like what it sounds like is with your experience, people were trying to get outside and do things. So
yeah, that's the wonderful common denominator. It has been, so gratifying to see so many people, and they're continuing. It's not just a COVID phenomenon. People are still, this is, a year later, still wanting to be outside, wanting to do things, being on their bikes. So, if there's a few good things to come out of it, I think there's a real active, more engaged community here in Baton Rouge.
When you look at year over year, what kind of percent do you think you're looking at that it's picked up pre-COVID versus post-COVID?
To compare 2019, which is a regular year, which we did, we're up this year 40% from 2019. I know.
That's phenomenal. Congratulations.
It's fabulous. Thank you, Baton Rouge.
Yes.
And New Orleans, and Mandeville.
Okay, Jenny, let's take another quick break, get a word from our sponsor, and we'll pick that up on the other side. We would like to thank Modus for their support of the NXT Entrepreneur Podcast. Who is Modus? Modus is a facility services company that works in the e-commerce fulfillment industry across the United States. What do? They like to say they take it from the conveyor to the dock door. What does that mean? It means that they're building the pick stations with the cable management. They're installing guardrails and bollards. They're putting down floor marking. They're putting up aerial signage. These guys build fencing systems, shelving systems, and racking systems. They also do rack recovery for when there's rack failures. They also install dock levelers and dock doors. Modus also installs ASRS systems, which is automated storage and retrieval systems, as well as other robotics projects. They've worked for the largest e-commerce retailers in the world, and they can work for you. If you need to find Modus, you can reach them online at modusmoves.com. And we are back with Jenni Peters of Varsity Sports. Jenni, I asked a lot of our guests about how they create a culture in their business and how important that is. I wanted to see if you can tell us about the culture at Varsity Sports, but also address the fact that I feel you've helped create a culture of running in Baton Rouge, and tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, I never take myself too seriously, and I think that's gone with me from every job or experience that I've had. And part of marketing is it's sort of a spontaneous fun. I mean, the things that you like, and that's just the way I live my life. And running can be where it's you tell people it's not really fun, but hopefully over the years I've made running fun in Baton Rouge.
Yeah, well, that seems to be the case.
Well, right now it's 100 degrees heat index, so I've got a challenge ahead of me. But
so you have a running group.
I do.
That's
20 years we've had this group.
And so you go around to different parts of the city on different days of the week.
Exactly.
Tell us how that works.
On Monday and Thursday, we meet in the afternoons after work, 5:30, and then Saturday mornings. And so that's what we do. We run everywhere. And we partner with a lot of Baton Rouge businesses. There's probably every restaurant and bar around that we've done a Thursday run from. And, you run, and then it's instant 50 or 60 people for that restaurant or bar, which can be kind of overwhelming. But, they just, it's just, Baton Rouge is so good for those kind of partnerships, and they support us, and we support them. So, and it's fun. I mean, we'll be, I think I tell you, we're at City Slice at LSU because Stephen Hightower's a friend, and we'll all go run and drink beer and eat pizza after.
That's fantastic. And then you also sponsor or support other running clubs.
We do. Right? Baton Rouge has got some really great opportunities. Happy's Running Club, which meets on Tuesdays, which is a little bit younger, less serious group that, we've been involved with and sponsor and, work with Eddie right now on it, and we love that. And Black Girls Run is a phenomenal group in Baton Rouge that we work closely with and love. Black Men Run. There's just, Baton Rouge has got the thing is, I think people need to step back and take a look. Baton Rouge is a very active community, diverse and active. So you've also had a lot of events over the years that strike me as being a perfect combination of your running background or your running life and your marketing. And I was wondering if you could tell us about some of those events. Well, go to our Facebook page and kind of take a look. It's just, it's interesting. But one of the things that we've always done, I think I mentioned to you before this, Andrew, is that our June birthday in Baton Rouge has always been something we've tried to do something really special for. So one of the ones that started it really kind of kooky is I decided, let's do a redneck run, and everybody dress up like rednecks. We run around and we did things like, watermelon seed spitting and, toilet lid horseshoes and stuff like that. And I said, I don't want anybody to be offended, but it ended up being so good that the next year I said, how am I going to top that? And I did a June brides run, and everybody dressed up like brides. I said, nobody's going to come. And we had 96 people dressed up like a bride. We even got written up in the newspaper because somebody saw one of the girls in a full bride regalia running down Dalrymple, and they didn't know what they were seeing. And so we laughed because we knew it was somebody from our brides run, but she looked like a legitimate bride running down there. And we did a circus and had a circus horse and tightrope. And I mean, every year we try to do a little bit different. And the last one that we did before COVID was one that was a little bit different, but we decided we were going to have 75 people run from our Mandeville store to our Baton Rouge store to see if we could get there before we closed at 5. And we did. You know, we took all the back roads, and, you know, we didn't have an area of police escort, so it was a little dicey, but it's one of those experiences. You know, life's about those experiences and memories that, you know, that are a little bit edgy, but you'll never be able to, you know, you'll never be able to forget.
So do you feel like every year you're trying to top the previous year?
I do. The pressure is immense, Andrew.
That's fantastic. But it's so cool to see you having so much fun doing that. And you know the runners just love that too.
Hopefully so.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I've gotten even some of the series, because this running group is so diverse. I mean, you've got an ER doc to, you know, to any number of people, the head of the state architect. So, you know, it's a real diverse group. And, you know, they have learned to not take themselves too seriously either if they're going to hang out with me.
Yeah, but it's just, you know, I kind of have seen this like in advertising that you see on TV now. If you compare, you know, some of the commercials where they really try to be funny, and some of them are, versus how they would have done it 15 or 20 years ago, where they, you know, maybe tried to be a little more serious. So, you know, I think you can catch a lot more flies with honey and humor than being serious. And so congrats on doing that.
And maybe it goes back to what we talked about earlier. What do you want your brand personality to be?
Yeah. Well, yours is clear and fun.
Kooky.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of miscellaneous type stuff I was just curious about. So as you've grown to these locations, well, I was going to ask you also about, but you've also done like a pop-up store, seasonal type pop-up store. Didn't you do something at Perkins Road?
We did. You know, I love Perkins Row. You know, dying to see it get totally back on its feet again. But we did a holiday pop-up where we were there for 3 months during the Christmas season. And it was a real great experience. Yeah. You know, I think I would do it again in the right circumstances, particularly with our challenges of, you know, having too small a store for as successful as we are. I really, if the right opportunity.
So you were in a storefront.
Yeah, and it was just a 3-month lease. That's it's kind of a thing that some of the shopping centers around the country are experimenting with, and great opportunity for us because you're just there for 3 months. You don't have to pay year round, and you do it during your busy season, which is Christmas.
So when you look at the number of shoes you're selling, how do you do your purchasing? I mean, that seems to be like so tricky when you look at a manufacturer's shoe options and the colors and the different design packages. Like, how do y'all feel comfortable that you're zeroing in on the right product?
You know, it's somewhere between art and science. You know, you project, but all our stores are in these little houses, so storage is always challenging. So it's unlike somebody that may have a lot of storage, you could do it. So it's a continual thing. I mean, we're ordering every single day, so that makes it a little bit easier.
I see. So you're seeing what's moving quickly. You can react quickly.
You get better terms if you order futures, you know, if you book it way in advance. But, you know, these days with the COVID and supply chain challenges, it's a Wild Wild West out there. You get what you can get. We've got some brands that are just busting at the seams, like a brand called Hoka and On Cloud, and they can't fill demand, you know, between supply and, you know, how popular they've become.
Yeah, well, I just got my first pair of Hokas, and
amazing brand.
Yeah, like walking on clouds.
It is.
They're nice. Okay, so I was curious how technology that you use in your businesses helps you manage these multiple locations. I mean, is that a huge part of making you be able to do what you do?
It's not anything that's totally out of the box. I mean, we've got a really sophisticated POS system that was developed by somebody in the specialty run industry, so that's helpful. But you know, it's you know that probably the technology that we're using the most now is kind of evaluating the biomechanics of people's feet. You know, we do it still with our own visual gait analysis, but we've got actually a 3D scanner that actually takes a picture in the store and does some measurements and pressure sensitivity. So I find that fascinating to be able to communicate with the customer. So you go in there and, it takes a minute and I can show you all the stuff about your feet that, that may lend itself to one shoe or the other.
Now, that's not happening at big box.
No, sir.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. So the whole process of that and then the gait analysis is putting you in a position to be able to make the right recommendation on a shoe. So
Absolutely.
Someone may come in and say, look, I want that color, in this manufacturer.
And they may,
But if they're more interested in getting the right shoe for their gait and, their biometrics or whatever, then you're able to make an educated recommendation.
Yeah. And pretty quickly too.
Yeah.
So that's one service that that you can't one click for sure.
Yeah. I can see where that'd be huge. There was a store in Austin, which I can't remember the name of now, that did that early on, and kind of a boutique store, very similar to yours.
There's a couple good ones in Austin.
Yeah, and but it is now the home of a big condominium tower, so it is no longer.
Yes, sir, really.
Yeah. So let's talk about the vision for the future, growth plans. When you look down the road, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking I should have stopped with one store. I just, I keep saying this is it, that I'm not going to do anything anymore. And I said that the last couple of years, and I opened Lakeview, in the middle of the pandemic. So I could just tell you that 4 stores is plenty, because I can just spread myself so thin. And I've got great managers, and everybody that's worked for me has worked for me for years, but there's still only one you. And so, I never got into this to make the money. So it's, if it comes my way, great. If it doesn't, no.
Well, it seems very similar to your approach to running, right? When it got to the point that you weren't enjoying it as much, you backed off, and it sounds like you're at your sweet spot right now. Is that fair?
Yes, I think so. Until next week, you ask me what, did a good opportunity come up? So I always evaluate a good opportunity, but it's not anything I have in my radar right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at how many businesses can be really disrupted by technology or e-commerce. And yet the success of your business boils down to that service, right, that you cannot get otherwise. And that seems to bode well for the future of your business. And I could imagine there always being a need for a boutique running store, particularly in running cities,
Yeah, I guess so. I'm at 5 years ago in the industry. We were told that e-commerce is going to kill brick and mortar. It's going to, kill us. So, hang on to what you've got. And so, but, here we are in 2021, and that's not the case at all. So, and the thing about, and it's not just our running store here in Louisiana, running stores, they're called running stores, but like I said, when you look at the customer that comes in, they're not many that are runners, so it's almost a misnomer to call it a running store. It may be a comfort shoe store or a solution store, because we get tons of referrals from doctors, that see us as a part of their patient care. So it's a very broad market that we have out there, not just runners, thank goodness.
Well, Jenni, it has been a treat to talk to you.
Andrew, it's been a wonderful afternoon.
So easy.
It's almost like I had a beer.
So I appreciate you coming in. Congratulations on all that you've accomplished in your career, and continued success with everything that you do.
Well, thank you for letting me look back over it. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Jenni is such a fun person to be around. I just enjoyed our conversation so much. I picked up on a reoccurring theme from Jenni, and it's how she allows things to just progress by the natural flow. Like her getting into running. I mean, she just went to go get a free beer and a T-shirt and run a 10K, and it led to a lifelong passion for running. And her business, I mean, that developed just as a natural flow when she got into business. She had no aspirations of growing the tremendous business that she did. In her marketing, the run hard, live easy just kind of naturally flowed, and they made that happen. And they were going to do that for 1 month. She told that story and has done it for every pair of shoes for 21 years. And then the natural flow of the growth of her business and how she has built these stores over a period of 20 plus years. We love how she selects old homes for her shops, and because they feel warm and inviting and friendly. Jenni is so much fun. She's spontaneous, and we just had a blast. Just loved her stories. We appreciate you guys watching, and we will catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur Podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.